Welcome to my kitchen counter. I'm going to get started here with a lump of clay, get to know it a little bit. This particular lump is a little on the dry side. You can tell because it's splitting at the edges, it's firm to the touch, but that is okay. I'm going to work with it anyway. When I'm working with a small tabletop sculpture setup like this, I like to have a few things around me. Plastic to keep the clay moist. If you're working with just a small lump like this, a sandwich bag is great. I'm also going to work on top of this masonite round. This material is more porous, a little less sticky than the finished countertop underneath. I also have a sponge and a few other tools. I have a needle tool and a wooden sculpture tool. I actually don't use this tool at all in this demo, but it sure is cute. Another tool that is helpful is this soft rubber rib. It's great for compression, great for surfacing, and I'm going to use it a lot in this video. I also have water and a hand towel just to keep my hands dry and clean, especially when I'm doing surface work. So now that I have everything set up, I'm going to just move it back, give myself some elbow room, and get started. In this demo, I'm going to show you how I make sunny side up eggs. So I'm going to pull off an egg-sized lump and start to work it. Because this clay is dry, I'm going to add some water and work it in. If your clay is too wet, you might have to leave it out in the air for a bit. If you do that, it will develop a skin around the outside that'll be much drier than the inside. So no matter what state my clay is in, I'm always going to start this way, squeezing back and forth. It's going to push all the air bubbles out and regulate the moisture content. Now I'm going to squeeze this lump out into more of a pancake. So I'm doing this using my thumbs on the front and the pressure from my fingers on the back and going around and around, flattening it out and squeezing it into a shape that makes me happy. I'm going to squeeze between my palms, whatever feels right. I support it. And I'm going to take the rib and flatten down all these lumps and bumps left from my hands. And this is doing a couple of things. It's planing down that surface and compressing and flattening that slab out. It's also stitching together the surface. So all those little stress marks that show up, going back and forth with a rib, giving it some pressure, will knit all of those together, make it smooth and also strong. The next thing I'm going to do is start to adjust this edge. It's a bit blunt, and because of the way it was flattened, this outer edge has been stretched the most. So there's some stress marks, some ripping and tearing. It's going to need a little extra love. I'm just going to go around and smooth all those marks in. I'm also going to try and pinch and taper out those edges to get rid of the blunt look. The next thing I'm going to do is add a little wiggle. I feel like a little wiggle really adds some character, some implied motion that wasn't there before. So I'm going to go around, I'm going to use the edge of my index finger and my thumb or another finger to provide support on the other side, and I'm going to push back and forth. That looks pretty good, so I'm going to get started on the yolk. I'm going to pull off a yolk-sized lump and roll it in between my palms. When I'm doing this, I'm trying to hit the high parts of my palm. I notice that when I roll in the very middle, it tends to oval out and get pointed at the edges, so I'm going to just roll all around the high edges of my palms. That looks pretty good. I'm going to just give it another quick roll. Great. So now I'm going to cut this sphere in half, and I'm going to use the needle tool to create a guideline for cutting. This is like maybe how you would cut an avocado in half. I'm just going to twist the sphere all the way around and create that guideline. And now I'm going to go in at a stabbing depth and follow that guideline all the way around. So now that I have 2 half spheres, I'm going to attach one to the surface of this egg white. But first I'm going to clean off my tools and my hands. If I leave that clay on there, it'll dry out pretty quickly and flake off onto my work, which is not ideal. I'm going to round out the cut edge of this yolk. This will help it tuck in more nicely on the surface of the egg white. You can see all the fingerprints showing up on the surface. That can be dealt with at a later stage. Right now I'm just trying to get the shape right. Before I attach, I'm going to clean up the surface of this slab. I'm just going to take this rib and glide it over. We'll get rid of all of those marks. So to attach 2 surfaces together, I'm going to slip and score. I'm going to add a little bit of water, not too much, and I'm going to kind of slice it up with the needle tool. I'm cross-hatching, cutting it up, and this is stirring up some slip on the surface using the water. It's also giving it more tooth so that it can marry really well with the other surface. And I'm going to do the same thing on this surface. Got a little excited on the bottom there, so I'm just going to clean that up so it doesn't show out on the side of the yolk. And then we'll just press these together really well. Pretty firm, not too firm. You don't want to mess with the shape we made. And now I'm going to attach the other half sphere to this second egg that has magically appeared. So a little water, scratch it up. And press together. And that's all I'm going to do at this stage. I'm going to leave these out in the air for a couple of hours, and when I come back, they're going to be leather hard, so that means that the clay is stiffer than it was before, and it gives me the opportunity to touch it differently than I would have been able to when it was in its squishy state. This is going to be my final pass, so I'm cleaning off my rib really well so I don't end up dragging bits of clay across the surface. And I'm going to bend my rib when I touch it to the surface. This will help blend it in without leaving any marks behind. And when I'm going around the edge, I'm just touching it to the surface. I'm not exerting pressure. can start to work on this yolk. I started out with just a small point of the rib, but then I decided to bend it and I can make a more broad, clean stroke that way. I'm cleaning off my rib pretty often because I'm accumulating small amounts of clay as I do this. For my final move, I'm going to take my fingertips in some water and chase around this edge. I'm just getting rid of those lines left behind from the rib. I don't like for there to be evidence of the tools that I used in the final product. And I'm just going to get rid of this thumbprint. And that's a done egg. The other one's pretty rough. It could use some work. I'm not going to put you through that again. So I'm going to do that work off camera. And done. And that is it. That is one way to make sunny side up eggs.